And welcome. Okay, now I'm going to share my screen. Are you ready for this book? It's called Mr. Tempkin Climbs a Tree. It's a really fun one. And today is Earth Day, so it's even more exciting to read a book about a tree while we're celebrating the world. So this is by Cary Fagen, illustrations by Carles Arbat, and it is published by Carbon. Very exciting. Mr. Tempkin climbs a tree. I'm sitting on the porch counting my trading cards when Mr. Tempkin walks by on his way home from synagogue. He lives alone in the house next to ours. As usual, he waves at me. Can everyone wave? Hi! Do you have neighbors? Do you wave outside your window or when you're walking down the street? Yeah, so he gets to wave. Hi, Marky, says Mr. Tempkin. Ready to help? Ready, I say. Mr. Tempkin, how old are you? I ask as I come down the porch steps. Not as old as Rip Van Winkle, chuckles Mr. Tempkin, but I'm getting close. Do you think he's really young or really old?
Really old.
He's really old. My job is to water all the flowers in Mr. Tempkin's garden. Mr. Tempkin fills the bird feeder. The birds twitter impatiently. Can you twitter? Tweet, 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 tweet. What does a bird sound like? As soon as Mr. Tempkin's done, swoop down and start eating. We got a nom 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 nom. How do you eat? Yeah, just like that. Look, Mark, a cedar waxwing, Mr. Tempkin says, pointing. I stare at the beautiful bird. I've never noticed a bird like this before. It's a pretty bird. That says that spend time with Mr. Tempkin is a mitzvah. If it is, it's a fun one because I really like Mr. Tempkin. Mr. Tempkin suggests I pull up weeds. Is it hard to be old? I ask as I work. Sometimes Mr. Tempkin says nod, but there are 4 things that keep me going. What things? Can you hold up 4 fingers? Ready to count? We've got 4 things. The first, number 1, is walking to the synagogue every morning. The second is smelling my roses. Can you smell the roses? The third is listening to the birds. You listen? And the 4th is you. Me? There's nothing like having a friend, Mr. Tempkin says. You're good company, Marky. The next morning, Mr. Tempkin comes out to his porch and I wave as usual. Can you wave? Say, hi, Mr. Tempkin.
Hi, Mr. Tempkin.
I jump up and go over to help him. Mr. Tempkin is in a huff. These pesky squirrels keep raiding my bird feeder. I'm going to have to hang it up higher. If the bird feeder is higher, can the birds still reach it?
Yes.
Because the birds can fly, so they'll be able to reach it. But will the squirrels?
No.
Not, right? Mr. Tempkin ties a rope to the bird feeder and starts climbing. Mr. Tempkin, aren't you a little too old to climb a tree? I ask. Nonsense. Why would he be too old? What can happen?
He's gonna fall.
Is he gonna fall?
Yes.
Mr. Tempkin climbs high and high. I think this is far enough, he says. I'm getting a little dizzy up here. Oh, Balana, we'll see. Maybe you should come down, I suggest. I just have to tie this rope end of the branch. Can you tie the bird feeder? You tie it. Ready? Mr. Tempkin reaches out and ties the rope to the branch. But suddenly, he loses his balance. Mr. Tempkin falls through the branches and leaves. He lands. Can we hear that sound like when he falls?
No.
Uh-huh. Do you think he's happy or is he going to be sad?
Sad.
He's going to be sad. It probably hurts. I've run over. Are you okay, Pumpkin? I'm fine, Marky, except for my ankle. I don't think I can stand up. Don't move, Mr. Tempkin, I say. I'll be right back. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? Where should he go?
Maybe the doctor?
Probably go to the doctor, find some help, yeah. I run into my house. Mr. Tempkin fell out of his tree, I tell Mom. She calls for an ambulance on her cell phone as she hurries outside. What's an ambulance?
A special truck that works that brings people from where they are to the hospital.
Exactly. And what does it sound like? Does it go wee wee?
Yes.
Yeah. The parents carry Mr. Temp to the ambulance on a stretcher. So much fuss for nothing, Mr. Temp says. I watch the ambulance go down the street. All day, I wait for Mr. Tempkin to come back. I eat my lunch on the porch. I read books. I watch the birds. Finally, a taxi pulls up in front of Mr. Tempkin's house. The driver takes the wheelchair out of the tree. He helps Mr. Tempkin get out of the car and into the wheelchair. There's a brand new bandage on Mr. Tempkin's. What does he have? What is this?
A cast.
As a cast. Don't worry, Mark. It's just as he says. I need bandage on for 2 weeks so it'll heal properly. I breathe a sigh of relief. Can you breathe? I'm glad nothing was broken. Me too. Climbing trees is not for old men. And I guess just a foolish old man, he says. No, you're not, I blurt out. When I'm old, I'm gonna climb trees too. Mr. Tempkin laughs. What time is it? Mr. Tempkin asks, looking at. Can you check your watch? What time is it? We can make it synagogue for the afternoon service. See you later, Marky. I watch as Mr. Tempkin pushes himself in the wheelchair, along in his wheelchair. But he only gets a few feet before he slows to a stop. I guess I'm not strong enough, he says. What should Marky do?
Help him by pushing his wheelchair?
Maybe I can push you, I offer. Mr. Tempkin's eyebrows go up. Better ask your parents. My mom says that helping Mr. Tempkin would make me a mensch. I get behind the wheelchair and grab the handles. Mr. Tempkin grasps the big wheel. Together, we move along the sidewalk. Teamwork, cries Mr. Tempkin. How is Marky being a mensch?
By pushing his wheelchair.
Last, we get to the synagogue. Isaac Tempkin, says the rabbi as we enter. What happened to you? And hello, Marky. Nice to see you. I fell out of a tree, says Mr. Tempkin. Isn't it nice that my friend Marky helped me get to synagogue today? The rabbi smiles. He gives me a kippah to put on my head. The service begins. How do you put on a kippah? Can you put your kippah on? Ready? Kippah. Mr. Tempkin and I wheel home again. You must be tired, says Mr. Tempkin, pushing me all the way. I'm fine, I say. Now I'm going to take care of the garden. Mr. Tempkin sits in his wheelchair as I work. Let's give a little more water to the roses, he says. The bird feeder is too high for me to reach. Can you reach up? Reach and stretch. No climbing, Mr. Tempkin says. This time we'll use our heads. We find a small and tie it to the end of a broomstick. Right? That works? Because what can they do? Can they reach or reach higher? That's pretty high. Tempkin fills the bucket with birdseed and holds it up and pours the seed into the feeder. The birds immediately fly down. Look at the blue jays, Mr. Tempkin. We both grin. Look at all those birds. Every morning, I help push Mr. Tempkin to the dog and back again. 2 weeks later, Mr. Tempkin goes to the hospital for pickup. Do you think it was good or bad? Do you think he's healed?
Yes.
He looks better. I sit on the porch waiting for him to come home. A taxi brings Mr. Tempkin home. He gets out without his bandage. He does a little dance. Hooray! I shout. Yay! Time for school. What's gonna happen? Mom and Dad walk the porch as I get on the bus. Mr. Tempkin comes outside. Now it's my to wait for you, he says with a wink. As I climb on the school, I can hear the birds singing. Mr. Tempkin is right. There is nothing like having a friend. Can you give a big hug to someone near you? Because you need to have friends. A big hug. Yay! Now, we stop sharing. I hope you all enjoyed that story and go out maybe tomorrow on a nice day and appreciate the world that we have. And if you're gonna climb a tree, make sure that you are very careful and do not fall.